So welcome to the call. We've got a few people joining us a bit early, and I won't be on video the whole time, but I wanted to say hi to you all and show my face. Sometimes when I do these webinars, I share the screen with you, which you can see in the background. And yeah, I just figured it'd be nice for you to actually see me. Now, I do have a caveat. We have a big thunderstorm going on in Melbourne at the moment. So the rain is bucketing down outside and there's a little bit of thunder and lightning, but I do sincerely hope we won't get interrupted. If we do, I will make sure that you get the recording of the call and all that sort of stuff afterwards. So we're going to kick off in just a moment. Just waiting for a few more people to join us who have registered today. There'll also be quite a few people who naturally are at work or busy because it's the Christmas season. So they'll be getting the recording that we'll be sending out after the call. Fantastic. So I hope you guys are having a lovely evening, those of you who have arrived. We're going to be kicking off in about 1 minute. So if you need a glass of water, a cup of tea, or anything else before we kick off, just make yourself nice and comfortable and settle in for a really good, nice, energetic 1 hour of power that's going to help you set up for next year, whether you're in your own business, working for someone else, or simply just looking to get out and do something completely different. I think we're going to get started because I do know that there were a few people who are going to be arriving a little bit late. So for both of you, there are 2 people on the call currently. Anyone else who is joining in will obviously also be able to use the chat box. So with the chat box, you can choose, if you want to, you can write a question to everyone, so everyone will be able to see what you're writing. Or if you want to write a personal message to me, you can also choose that if you're more comfortable asking questions, and I won't mention any names. I have also had a few people send through some questions beforehand that I will be answering during the call if I do have time for it. So without further ado, I'm actually going to stop my video here so that I don't distract you guys, but I'll be back in a little while for question and answer time. So I'll be right here in the background. Okay, fantastic. So today we're going to cover the 5 steps to a new job in 2018. And I don't know about you, but I used to be an avid New Year's resolution person who always said that, you know, next year's going to be different. Next year I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden the holidays rolled around. Somehow it got to March and I hadn't really done something about it. And those sort of things just kind of tend to happen and the year sort of unfolds. So I really want to acknowledge you for being on the call today, or if you're listening to this recording after the call, I still want to acknowledge you because not everyone makes time for these sort of questions right now. So before we start, whether you're listening to the recording or live, I would like you to allow yourself to turn off your phone. Obviously, if you're watching on your phone, please don't turn it off. Please keep watching the screen. But if you are watching or listening in, please turn off other distractions. Have pen and paper handy. If you do like to take notes, you'll get this recording afterwards, so you don't need to worry about that. But do take notes if there's anything that I say that kind of sparks something special in you, okay? And be ready to receive some information, see what resonates with you. And if anything I share is not relevant for you, maybe think about someone else in your life who would really benefit from these tips. So in today's session, we're going to cover the 5 key areas that you can look at now. I don't mean right now, you can do it tonight, obviously, if you want to, but I mean in the next couple of weeks, because for most people, we're going to have some time away from whatever our day job or regular work is. And sometimes these 5 key areas can be really, really helpful when you've got a little bit of headspace, whether it's an hour here and there or half a day or a full day that you can actually dedicate to this where you wouldn't normally have time and space for it. I'm also going to share a few bonus tips with you that can be very, very helpful. As I said, regardless if you are looking to start your own business or if you are looking to get into another type of job just altogether. And please ask any question. ask any questions that you have, because I will be making time towards the end of the call to answer any questions about how specifically to get moving. I know for many people, the how, the action steps, those sort of things are very, very important. Most of them we're going to cover here today, but if there's anything that you feel that you would like to ask for yourself or someone else, please do. All right, so briefly about my journey. A few of you lovely people out there listening have met me or possibly worked with me in the past. But as you might know, I started my life in Sweden, where I lived up until I was about 20. And if I look at my career in Sweden, other than going to school and growing up and learning how to speak English, my work at the time, my career stuff was mostly around retail, which was, you know, student jobs and sort of things like that. And I studied political science at uni with a focus on communication. So I didn't really know exactly what it was that I wanted to do, but I knew that I was interested in international culture and people and communication. I then decided to move straight after finishing high school. I moved to the US, where I actually worked as a nanny for a year. So I mainly worked with childcare. And after my time in the US, I moved back to Sweden again, and then I ended up in the UK. And when I was living in the UK, I was working mostly in the HR admin and finance space. So I did a couple of different types of roles during my years in the UK. And as you would have seen if you have seen a few of my previous videos, I did eventually get sick of the long winters and the much rain that they have in the UK. So eventually I landed in 2010. I moved here to Australia. And since moving to Australia, I've been working mostly in media sales, marketing, and coaching related roles. So as you look at that, and when recruiters look at that, they go, oh, goodness me, that's a really big spread of different things that you've done. But what I normally do for myself, as well as what I do for my clients, is that I look for the themes underneath it all. And the themes for me, if I look back at my entire career to date, I'm 35 years old, turning 36 next year, is the themes for me are communication, people, and problem solving. Possibly also a flavor of starting up new companies, divisions, or projects or initiatives. But those are the themes that I see in every single role that I've had and things that I've really enjoyed. And if you're listening to the recording, feel free to pause here and have a think about themes in your career from the past. And if you're listening live, maybe make a note to come back to this section and ask yourself what some of the themes are that you have had in your life. So why does our job matter at all? You know, I know many people who would say things like, oh, well, it doesn't really matter what we do. It's just a job. But I actually did some number crunching on this because I thought it was a little bit interesting. So I've just done some rough math here, and math is not my major, so forgive me if I've gotten this wrong for anyone out there. But if you work full-time between the age of 20 to 65, you are going to spend 86,400 hours at work. 86,400 hours. That's pending that you work a normal 40-hour work week. If you've got a really high demanding job that requires you to do more than that and do overtime and work weekends, you see what I mean. If we look at that, it's 22% of your time. 22%, almost a quarter of your time in your productive years you will be spent physically at work, whatever your work environment looks like. And this does not include commute or travel time. So for many people, if you're living in a bigger city, I live in Melbourne, even if I ride my bike or commute in some way, I've got at least an hour, probably an hour and a half commute in total every day. I know people who commute a lot further than that. So this is one thing we've got to realize, that if we're measuring time, and time and money are obviously traditional units of measuring value. So be really mindful what you do with those 22% or 86,400 hours actually does matter. And you can see why, if you're not happy with what you do, that would be getting really heavy. Now, I bet your head is ticking and you want to compare this with a few other things. So just as a side note, if we look at those the age of 20 to 65, and let's pretend that you're sleeping 7 hours a night every day, you'll be sleeping about 29% of your time. So you'll be at work a little bit less of that time. But like I said, if we add up commuting and other things, it actually adds up pretty quickly. So why else does our job matter? Well, we're looking at a time when things are actually starting to change from measuring time to measuring impact. So in the industrial era, we measured more how many hours spent producing a certain result. So, we had factory style things, and we had, streamlined processes. And even if we look at the school system, and some people, as a side note, would argue that today's traditional school system is actually inherited from the industrial era when we were creating workers. Today we're trying to create new innovative ways of solving big problems in the world. And if we're looking at that old model, a lot of people would argue it's actually not solving that problem. So nowadays, what I'm seeing in my work and what we're starting to see across a range of countries is that it's more important with impact and result rather than the time we spend. So gradually gone are the days where we sat and the minutes or the hours were the most valuable unit, but rather how valuable is it to solve someone's problem. Now, depending what kind of work you do, obviously the concept of problem would look a little bit different. A hairdresser solves the problem in the sense that someone comes in and they need a haircut, or they've messed up the coloring and they need someone to recolor it so their hair isn't orange or whatever. If you are, in the finance or legal profession, you are helping people with the problem of managing their finances, or possibly navigating their way out of a legal issue that they didn't anticipate that they were going to have. So you're always solving problems, whether you like it or not. Even in a retail environment, you're solving a problem because someone wants something to wear, things like that. So that's why our job matters. And if we move on, because the most common question I get from people is, how do I go and create this change, Emmy? I get that it's really important that I do something meaningful. I don't want to waste those 86,400 hours on something that doesn't matter for me. So how am I going to use that? So what most people do is that they're stuck in the what or the how. They either don't know what specifically they want to do, or they might have a rough idea of what that might be, but they have no idea how to go about it. So Simon Sinek is a marketing and leadership person that I would highly recommend that you check out if you haven't already. He's got a brilliant blog, and his TED Talk specifically on starting with why is something that I rewatch on a regular basis, and it's very, very interesting, because if people start addressing why before the how and the what, we actually come at it from a very different angle. So if we're going to start with why, especially when it comes to your job and why you want to be doing something different next year, start asking yourself the why question. Why would I like to do something different? Why is that important? For what purpose do I want to change roles? It can be really basic things like work-life balance. I want to spend more time with my family, and at the moment with the job that I have, I can't because I have to commute really far or I have to work crazy hours. Your why could be family or future oriented, in the sense that you want to buy a property and financially your current job is not paying enough for you to save up or do whatever it is that you want to do. Your why might be that you have this really deep yearning and desire to travel more, whether that's with work or on your holidays. So start with your why. Think about why. Is it actually, in my case, when I changed jobs from the media sales environment, for me, my why was deeper than that. I wanted to grow and learn, and I wanted to have a job where I actually had an impact, where it made a difference that I was there and that I was working with a company who had some kind of an ethical or environmental impact or guidelines. So for me, my why was really deep around sustainability. So this is one thing I do a lot when I work one-on-one with clients and really unpack the why. I'm going to talk you through some of the how here today. But if you're listening to this recording, I want you to pause here and have a think right now what your why is. Actually, even for those of you who are on the call right now, what's part of your why? Why would you like to have another job in 2018? Is it your personal growth? Is it your family or your loved ones? Is it because someone is really pissing you off and you want to move away from where you are? Or because you've heard about this really cool company, or you heard someone talk about their job and they sounded so happy and you want to move towards more of that because you realize that that's possible. So there's no one answer to a why. If you need some help with this, absolutely, I'll have my contact details at the end of the call where you can get in touch if you want me to help you unpack that. But your why is vital. There's no point in starting to ask yourself, how do I go about finding a new job, if you don't know why that's relevant to you, okay? And you can have a combination of reasons. There can be some emotional, some can even be spiritual, some can be strictly professional, performance, whatever it might be. Okay. So before we dive into the actual steps, I would like to do a bit of a reality check with you. And I trust that you're okay with this, because if you're on this call, you obviously care and you obviously want to create this change. So to get some momentum and to get some energy, I want to just put two things on the table before we kick off the rest. Remember that you deserve to do something that matters for you. You really, really, really do. I can't stress this enough. Most people, when they come and work with me, they feel like they have to settle, or they feel like they have to accept something less than what they want. And I assure you, you don't actually need to do that. You deserve to do something that matters for you. But in addition to this, and you have to be willing to work to create the change. Because the thing is, when we are expanding our comfort zone and we're going into the learning zone, we're going into the unfamiliar, we have to stick to our guns. We have to back ourselves, and we have to choose that some evenings after the job you may not like at the moment, you might need to study something or upskill something. You might need to go networking even when you're really tired. I'll share this with you only for the purpose of finding a little bit of momentum and accountability with yourself. When I first found life coaching as a potential for me, well, I mostly started in the coaching space because I wanted to learn more. So my first space was actually not to work as a coach, but to learn more about coaching. And what I ended up doing, I was working full-time in a very demanding sales role at the time. So for about 6 months, when I first started studying, my regular week would basically be 5 full days of work. I would study in the morning. I'd get up early or do my workout, because I do like my fitness and my workouts. I would go to work for 8, 9, sometimes more hours. I would come home. I would spend at least an hour or two in the evening, either doing pro bono coaching, listening to study material, or upskilling myself in the coaching space. Now, naturally, that was fun as well, because when you're doing something fun, you're actually finding the energy. If I hadn't found coaching interesting or fun or developing, obviously I wouldn't even have bothered. But when you're doing something that matters, that work actually feels a lot of fun and it's a lot easier to do it. But I'm not saying it's going to come easy, and you have to acknowledge that unless you're willing to put in a little bit of blood, sweat, and tears and have a lot of fun with it on the side as well, it's not going to happen. We need to do that reality check right now, because if you're sitting here and hoping I'm going to give you the magic pill and that you're not going to have to do something, I'm really sorry. That's not the kind of call this is going to be. But the good thing about it is, if you're willing to accept both of these things, we can start to have some fun with how you're going to go about and do that. All right. Before we kick on, I want to talk to you briefly about what I call the magic triangle. So the magic triangle is basically the right career or the right role for you, knowing that this may change during the course of those years when we're 20 to 65 or however long you want to work, okay? So the first thing, the magic triangle, is fun. If work or our career or our workplace isn't fun, and I bet a lot of you listening right now, whether you're listening live or to the recording, it wasn't a lot of fun in your last job if you've left it, or you might not really be enjoying where you are right now. So when fun goes out the door, we actually stop performing, because if we can't remember the last time we had fun at work, or we had a good laugh with a colleague, or we, had a good connection with a client, then, it does kind of become a little bit pointless in the end. The second corner, so fun on its own, it can't be fun all the time. We all know that. So we need something that challenges us. And by challenge, I mean that it stretches us to grow, learn, and move on to the next level. So if we're not challenged by our either leadership or skill sets or you know, a good thing, for example, in the coaching industry, there's new material, new books, new people coming out all the time that I read up on. So it's a bit challenging sometimes to keep up with the latest research, but it's also a lot of fun, and it keeps me at the top of my game. And something I regularly talk to my coaches about, because yes, I'm a coach, and I also have coaches that help me. And thirdly and finally, something that you're naturally good at. So many people try to force themselves to fit into a pattern where they're not actually naturally good at the thing, or they're not naturally gifted. For example, I do a lot of work in the profiling space, and it was actually quite interesting. When I looked at my role that I used to have in finance, it was actually completely against my natural strength profile. It was a lot to do with systems and processes and procedures and checklists and things like that, which simply isn't how I operate or how I naturally operate. So having a job or having a role that doesn't complement your strengths is actually really dangerous. So let's look at the triangle again with a different set of eyes. So if it's fun and you're good at it, but it never challenges you, you're going to get bored and leave. If it's fun and challenging every second day, you're probably going to feel a little bit like, you know, a weird kind of energetic seesaw, and you don't really know what you're going to do about it. If it's challenging all the time and you're good at it, but it's never fun, you're going to lose your momentum. So whereas this model is by no means complete, I find that if you can tap into on any average week in a job role or something like that, you can tap into the three corners, you will find that it's a lot more fun to come to work. Okay, so we're going to dive into the first of the steps. Feel free to take notes, like I said. And if you do have any questions as we go through the steps, or if I'm going through them too quickly, I'd really, really encourage you to just kind of pause quickly and write down any questions you have in the comment box at the bottom of your screen. And just like I said, if you want to be anonymous, you don't have to, you can send it as a private message to me rather than so everyone can see it. Okay, so your values. This is a big part for anyone who comes and works with me on my transition program, which is one of the products that I deliver. Values is a really core part. So we spend a fair bit of time talking about this in one of the specific segments. But your values are essentially what's important to you. So like I said before, when we were talking about the why, some of the why can be our values. So your values, if you know what they are, will form a bit of a checklist. And this checklist is really, really helpful in a range of ways. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But one person I'd like to share as well. So Dr. John DeMartini, I will send a link to some of his work, including his book, in the follow-up email you'll be receiving in the next 24 hours. But Dr. John DeMartini has dedicated a big part of his life's work. He's an American coach who travels frequently to Australia. So if you're based here, he will probably be presenting in a city near you at some point in the next year. But he talks about higher chunk values and lower chunk values. And if you're familiar with this work, I'm probably repeating what you already know. If you're not, a higher chunk value is something like family, growth, contribution, kind of a big cloud value. For me, for example, learning and teaching is a really big cloud for me. So it's a high chunk value. A lower chunk value doesn't mean that it's any less valuable. It just means that it's more specific. A specific lower chunk value can be something like practicing a certain sport or playing a specific instrument. For example, if someone's highest value was playing the guitar, they would be trying to do that in their professional life and in their social life whenever possible. They'd probably be listening a lot to guitar music and things like that as well. So your values are unique to you. I spend a fair bit of time one-on-one with people unpacking this because it's quite hard sometimes to know exactly how to do that. I'll send you a bit of a values exercise in the follow-up email you're going to get from me. But essentially a value, or what's important to you, is where you spend your energy, time, money, and focus. So a really quick way to determine your values, if you don't want to use the questions I'm going to send you later, is to just have a quick think about, where do you spend most of your time? Yes, of course, you need to eat and sleep and things like that, but do you sleep more or less than the average person would be doing? Where do you spend your money? Do you spend it mostly on travel? Do you spend it mostly on health? Is it on tech gadgets? Is it on sporting equipment? Is it on your home? You might be spending a large chunk of money on your home, which would mean possibly that your home or your family living in that home would be some of your highest values. So I'll send you more detail around this, but if you don't know what your values are, it's really, really hard to go and pick a job or pick a company to work for, because what I want you to start thinking about over the next week or so, or holiday break, or you can even start tonight, of course, I'm not going to stop you, is to shortlist the companies you'd actually like to work for. When most people are looking for a new job, they hop on some kind of a job search site and they put in a similar title to what they already have. And surprise, surprise, the jobs that start coming up are exactly the types of job you already have and may be well and truly tired of, right? So instead, start looking at, for example, in my case, sustainability and environment are important values of mine. So I would be looking for and shortlisting companies who, regardless what they produce, regardless if they produce a product or a service, I want to work with a company or be affiliated with a company that has strong environmental thinking. I could never work, for example, for a company that, like a coal mine or something like that. It would just not sit right with me. Or a company that produces insane amount of plastic or insane amount of waste or pollution or things like that. So I would want to work for a company that takes a strong environmental responsibility. Whatever your values are around will determine the type of company you want to be working for. And I know this can be a really, really difficult thing, but just start thinking. If you're listening to the recording, pause here in a moment. And if you're listening live, just have a little think about what type of companies. Forget about the role, forget about the title, forget about the function. Think about companies that you really, really like. If you're a Richard Branson fan, do you like the Virgin Group? What part of the Virgin Group would you like? If so, etc. So when you start kind of listing companies rather than roles, you start to really broaden. And it does take a little bit more work to do it this way, but I assure you it's a lot more rewarding this way, because you'll find a company, or you'll be looking for a company that aligns with, if not all, at least quite a few of your personal values. So ask yourself things like, does this organization have clear values? Because sometimes they're impossible to find even on their website. Sometimes even if you would ask at an interview, I'm really curious, what are the core company values? And they can't answer you. Probably means that they either don't have them or they don't live by them. And also, do these values match your personal values? For example, is this company about work-life balance? Are they supporting people to go home early, work from home, have a flexible family life, or do they not? Because those sort of things are really important. If family, for example, is one of your highest values, you want to make sure that the job that you have or the company you work for support that. Flip side, if you found the perfect role, but the company requires you to work 10, 12 hours a day and keeping you away from your family, that would probably be really difficult for you. So that's the first key thing. And determining your values is actually a pretty quick exercise. Like I said, look out for the email that I'm going to send you and do the values exercise in there. If you want to find out more, Dr. John DeMartini and his book, The Values Factor, download it on Amazon or buy it for yourself at Christmas or whatever. Get someone else to get it for you as a stocking filler. It can be something really, really good for you to focus on over the Christmas holiday. The second one, once you've worked out what your values are, because those are the things that are important to you, is to work to your strengths. And I talk to people about this all the time. So it's so much more important to further improve something you have a natural talent for, rather than trying to learn a completely new thing. Now, this comes with a few caveats, of course. I'm not saying that you should stay stuck in, the triangle we had with the fun, the good at, and the challenge. I don't want you to stay in something that you're good at as a bit of a safety blanket. I want you to kind of use what you're good at to kind of elevate yourself to the next level. So there's lots and lots of tests available. And again, the Strength and Passion Finder is a big part of the program that I run with people. And one thing here that's quite important to to do is to use the tests that are available. I use 2 different tests in my program, a DISC test and a Strengths Finder test. But there are many, many ones that you can look up online as well. So there are lots of tests available that you can use. And even if you're not currently working in that area of strength, it can sometimes be really good to do a few profiling tests just to kind of reconnect with what you are naturally good at. I want to talk briefly as well about the difference between upskilling, which is about learning and expanding your horizons, versus doing something unnatural, which is forcing. And I'll use a good example here because when I went to university, we had to do, in political science, we had to do a few different things. And one of them was statistics. So we had to do a little bit of finance and statistics. And even though to a certain extent I was upskilling and learning, I was understanding a little bit more about how this program works and how I can use it. But it got to a point where when I had a general understanding of how the program worked, I felt like I was forcing myself to sit there and do something for, a couple of weeks in this particular course, this particular segment that was completely unnatural to me. I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't fun. I was not seeing any connection with how this was going to bring me closer to something more rewarding. So what I did is I finished up the course as best as I could. I always complete things that I start. And I banked it as a bit of an upskilling, and I then understood this particular statistical package that we were using to segment and sort data. But that said, I would never ever sit and work in a job that every day had to do that. And whatever your version of upskilling and, going into the next point, which is about curiosity and trying new things, there's never anything wrong trying something new, even if it's just the one time. Growing up, my mum always said to me, when it comes to new food and new culture and trying a new dish when you're traveling in a new country, it never hurts to try one time. If you absolutely don't like it, then don't have it. And the same goes for upskilling. If you think it would be really cool to learn more about marketing or sales or how to build a website or whatever it might be, have a go, do a cheap online course or something like that and test it out and see how you like it. But don't force something that feels completely unnatural. Another little thing I want to share here is that it's extremely common that people, by the time they come and work with me, that they'd be in their 30s, 40s, sometimes 50s. And what happens is that they picked a job way back when, or a career or a study path at uni that their parents or someone else suggested that they should, or their best mate was going to study law or finance or marketing or sales or whatever it was. So they studied the same. And sometimes people manage to force themselves through university. They force themselves through the whole thing and come out at the other end only to never want to see it again. But by that point, they feel like they've already invested too much time in it, right? So this is where I really want you to tap into curiosity and trying new things. Absolutely be curious, try new things, have some fun, but don't force it. And you will know in your gut and in your heart when you're forcing versus when you're learning. So I'll leave that with you to decide. But that's point number 2, to work to your strengths. Don't force yourself to do things that are not meant for you. Right. We're still here. Excellent. I've had a few messages from people who are apologetic that they can't make the live call. That's all good. We look forward for you to listen to us when you get to the recording. Okay, so part 3 then is to look at what's great, what's okay, and what's not okay. What I mean by this is very, very simple. So this, when you've worked out your values and you have maybe done some strength testing or something like that, then this is a really, really good exercise for you to do. So outline exactly what you don't want, i.e. the not okay part. What is a job or a company or something like that that you would never do? So you can even list it. So what are some job roles that you would never do? I would never be a cleaner. I would never be a whatever. Just fill in whatever that list is for you. And the same goes for companies. What are some companies that you would absolutely not work for in a million years? We all have our rules for that, what that is. So because as humans, we're very good at stating what we don't want. And a lot of people say we should focus on the positive. I always say, you know what, get the don't want out of the way first. Start that list, write it down, do whatever you've got to do to get it out of your system, and outline the things that you don't want, because then it frees up space so we can get really creative. And to start writing down the great. I'm not saying good here, I'm saying great. Okay, there's a big difference between good and great, and anyone who's read the book Good to Great would know exactly what I mean. If you haven't, feel free to Google it after the call. So in order to follow on what's the great, we want to write down an ideal job or organization. Now, some of you on the call go, duh, Emmy, if I knew that, I would already be kind of doing that or working towards that. I appreciate that you would. So hear me out here. If it's not very clear to you exactly what type of role or type of function you'd be doing, ask yourself some other ideal questions. How many days a week would you be working? What kind of wage would you be making? How big would your team be? Would you be managing people or not? If you would, how many? And if you wouldn't, how big is the team that you want to be part of? How big immediate team do you want to have versus how big do you want the whole organization to be? Is it a big global company? Is it a small regional company? Is it a family startup style thing? What is it? And just start writing it down. Write down things like what the office looks like, you know, what your physical space looks like, all those sort of things, right? And then when you've done that to the best of your ability, and again, if you come and have a bit more of a chat with me after the call, these are some of the things that I help clients with on a regular basis. But what you can do is that list a few in-between options. So in between the, I would never do that in a million years, to this is what I would love to do, have, or work in this type of environment. So list a few in-between options that you'd be okay with. Because sometimes we need to set our intention or set our focus and have a really clear idea what our end goal is. But what are some milestones? What could be some stepping stones towards that big, great, fantastic role or company that would really fulfill you as a person? So one thing I always say is be prepared to be flexible and realistic, but be as specific as you can when you set your intention as to what is great. And be really, really specific with what you don't want so that you can have a really clear checklist. So imagine after this call and after the Christmas break, if you actually sit down and do these exercises that I'm going to send you, you're going to have a values checklist that you could check any company and job against. Even when you get to the interview stage, you can use your values to ask questions in the interview. And the really cool thing as well is when we set our intention, when we start to focus in a certain direction, where our focus goes, energy will flow inevitably. So if you've got your eyes on a certain savings target or a certain job or a certain whatever, you will actually focus on that. Your energy will on a daily basis focus towards that without you even trying. But you need to remind yourself, and you need to set a really clear goal and really clear intention at the start. Okay, so goodness me, we're moving on. So step number 4 is about promoting yourself. And you would probably not be surprised here because I come from a marketing background. So many people would say, well, don't I need to know exactly what I want to be doing and how I'm going to be doing this before I start to promote myself? Well, you know what? If you don't tell people that you are looking for other opportunities, people are not going to know, so they're not going to be able to help you. And as a marketer, you know, promotion is not just a negative thing, or, you know, if there are any Swedes on the call, the whole idea of lagom, i.e. not too much, not too little. The Australians on the call, you might, you know, the tall poppy syndrome, like, don't stand too tall, don't be too different. Promoting yourself, I'm not talking about shameless bragging here. I'm talking about promoting the skills and the things that make up you so that you can have better opportunities attracted to you. Or so that people that know you or have you in their circles can help you connect with a thing that you're really good at. So there are 5 P's of marketing. These are listed a little bit differently depending where you go, but I'm going to run through them with this particular example in mind. So in marketing, we talk about a product. Now, you are, of course, not a robot. You're a beautiful human being with thoughts and feelings and all sorts of individual things about you. So your product If in marketing I was trying to sell a widget or a plant or a piece of furniture or something, that is my product. But in this case, the product is you, and you come with history, skill set, good experiences, bad experiences, fantastic managers or leaders in the past, terrible managers or leaders in the past. So the product here is you, and in order to actually move yourself towards that job, you need to be a little bit pragmatic about how you think about yourself as a product. The place, right? So we can have the most fantastic product, but in the wrong place. So we need to think about things like where you would like to be and what type of industries or organizations you want to connect with. It's really, really important because this will help your focus and it will help you connect with people. And we'll talk more about networking in a moment. It will help you connect with people in that place. Promotion. So this is where it gets a little bit icky, and people who don't like the word sales or marketing or promotion are probably cringing a little bit right now, which is perfectly fine. But promotion is about what is your hook? What's your special skill that's relevant for the specific job or industry? So let's say that you come from you've done a job for many, many years. So I'm going to use finance as an example. So let's say you worked in finance for a very, very long time. And in that particular role, attention to detail was really, really important. And even though you might not have loved the role that you did, the part about attention to detail and building complex things might be something that you really like. So a unique skill that you have is actually a higher level of attention to detail than probably the average population would have. So what is your hook? What is your special skill or skills? Because I can assure you, even if you feel like you're running out of ideas, I can assure you every single person I've ever worked with one-on-one has a minimum of 10 unique skills that makes them different. So start listing yours because I know that you have them. And if you get stuck, get in touch with me. Okay. Price. This is where things go wrong and where a lot of people will have either a very hopeful way of thinking that, that they're going to be comfortably reimbursed for doing as little as possible. Now, if you're on this call, I know that you're serious about your career and that's probably not you. So be really realistic here. Try and find out as best you can. You can do this through job search websites by putting in, salary brackets, for example. So work out what's a fair wage or salary bracket for this type of job or industry. So do your research. You can do it either online. You can talk to people that you know in the industry. If you don't know anyone in a particular industry, and you're not on LinkedIn already, by the way, I can highly recommend getting on LinkedIn and connecting with people there and starting to find out a little bit more about the industry you're looking to move towards. The other thing I want to say about price is that a lot of us have financial responsibilities we've got to keep in mind. We've got a mortgage, we've got a car, we've got all sorts of things. We've got possibly a family that depend on us. And so that one thing that can very, very easily keep people stuck and not help people move to that new job is exactly this. But remember this, if something is important for you and you are very, very good at it, or if you're willing to have a serious go, you would be amazed at how many alternative income streams you can find and how resourceful you can get. Sometimes we can't move exactly sideways and go from industry A to industry B and make exactly the same wage. Same goes for countries. When I moved from Sweden to the UK to Australia, there were certainly different salary levels here because the cost of living is different in different countries and things like that. So make sure that, especially if you are moving countries, that you do an extra bit of research. So that's just an important thing to know. And also remember that if you pitch yourself too high, you might be losing out on opportunities. Much the same, if you pitch too low, people are going to think you're not serious. So pitch yourself at a salary level that is actually very relevant. And the last one is packaging. So we can have the best product in the right place with a great promotion and a decent price, but the packaging is hideous. And this is one thing that a lot of career coaches, and especially people who help you with CVs and things like that, where they can help you really polish the packaging. So I probably work with people more at the, you and your skill set and working out those sort of things. Whereas the packaging side of things is really just that last shiny polish, or like how you actually present yourself. But it's really, really important to actually package and present your skill set in the best possible way. And then my probably favorite one. So all the steps we've gone through already, your values, working to your strengths, all the stuff we've talked about before, kind of comes down to this. And this is one of the favorite parts that I have on the transition program, which is build your inner circle. If you're going to create a change in your life, you do actually need a few people on board with you to help you, even if this doesn't come natural to you. And I can probably relate more than you realize if this resonates with you, because I used to be one of those people who said, I'd rather do it by myself. I don't need any help. I have, my pride. I actually want to do this all by myself. And you know what? That doesn't work like that. And if we're talking about energy and momentum and moving forward, how much cooler is it to have an inner circle and a team to celebrate with? So what do you do to recruit this inner circle, and what do I talk about? You can call it your inner circle, your team, whatever it is for you. But this is basically how I do it, but obviously in more detail with my clients. So start by asking yourself, okay, I know that I want to change jobs in 2018. I think I want to try something towards this particular industry or area. I want to go from working in the communication and sales environment to something more technical, or I want to go from something quite technical to something more artistic or creative. What do I know? Whatever your goal is. So ask yourself, who do you need to share your new focus with? This is not about who goes on your team, who goes around your metaphorical round table. This is about who would you share it with first, or who would be a couple of people? Is it friends, co-workers, your family, your partner, maybe not your partner? I don't know. Start with someone that you feel safe talking to. Because the thing is, very often, and many of you on the call might be thinking about stuff and kind of complaining about it to people, but you haven't really taken action. And in your own mind, it's you're kind of toing and froing about the options that you have. So the most important thing is to start talking out loud about it. It's not that hard. You're already on this call today, or you're listening to this recording and touching base with me. So you're already kind of starting to share the fact that you do have a new focus, which I absolutely honor you for. But ask yourself who else you could share it with. Who do you want on the bus? So this is if your 2018 is right ahead of you and you are setting out, who do you need with you on the bus in order to create this? Who do you want around the table? Do you need someone who's a strong activator who can help you get going? Do you need someone who's really loving and caring, who can kind of believe in you, and even those days when you don't believe in yourself? So this would be, and I would recommend, if you're starting to recruit your metaphorical roundtable or starting to pack your metaphorical bus, you want at least 5 people, minimum 5 people. It could be anyone. It could be your partner, it could be your parent, it could be your best mate, it could be just someone you've recently met, anyone. Equally important, who can you kick off the bus, or who's not allowed to sit around the table with you? Okay, so who does not belong on the bus? How I explain this to people is often that we kind of come with this sort of default inner circle that have come with us through our life. People we used to be friends with when we were younger, or people in our family that drive us, or extended family that drive us crazy, but they're kind of there by default. You do not need to listen to all of those people right now. So rather than having them there and them annoying you, ask yourself who can actually kind of sit back right now. I'm not talking about kicking them off your bus or never talking to them again. I'm talking about people who don't need to have a say right now. For example, if you have a parent that is very critical of creating changes and things like that, maybe don't talk to them right now. Maybe talk to someone else. Maybe recruit someone else to sit in, and your parent can be there in the background for later on. You do not need to listen to everyone that you used to listen to earlier. It's so important. And just because someone's off the bus for now doesn't mean that they can't get on later. So don't feel like this is an all or nothing game. Finally, what inspirational person could help? So very often we think about our inner circle based on people that we already know, which is brilliant because they're already in our circles. But what inspirational person could help? For example, I have a few people who I've never met and may never meet. I hope I do because they're pretty cool. But a few people that I have on my metaphorical bus is Oprah Winfrey, Brene Brown, who is the author of Daring Greatly and a few other fantastic books, and she's also done a TED Talk about vulnerability, Richard Branson, and Nelson Mandela. So those four, sort of 3-4 people, I actually think to myself at certain times when I'm going through a big change or I'm refocusing in my business or in my career and I come up against a certain obstacle, I close my eyes or stop for a moment and I actually think to myself, okay, what would Richard Branson do right now? If he saw this, what advice would he give me if he was here right now? And the chances are, if you've followed this inspirational person or leader and you've read their books or seen them on TV or listened to their presentations and things like that, you probably know what advice they would give you. So your inner circle does not have to only be made up of people that you know and have met or could meet. It can also be made up of people that you may never meet. So the inner circle is a really, really, really powerful one. Okay, so a bonus thing that I want to leave you with, in addition to the 5 steps we've covered here today, and again, I'm going to send you a worksheet, a follow-up email with all the actions that you can go ahead and do straight away. But the bonus is to start networking. People throw this word around, they don't really know what it means, and they're kind of like, oh goodness, where do I start? So a few places you can start. If you're not on LinkedIn already and you are a professional, depending on the country you're in, it may or may not be very developed. But here in Australia, and definitely when I was in the UK as well, LinkedIn is really, really big. So make sure to get yourself a good LinkedIn profile. Just Google LinkedIn's profile setup and best practice. You will need a professional photo and a few other things, but get yourself a LinkedIn profile and start kind of familiarizing yourself with it. If you haven't been very active on it, it's kind of a more sophisticated version of Facebook, I would say. Well, more sophisticated, more professional. Meetup groups, again, this will depend on the country you're in. So meetup groups can be anything from entrepreneurial networking to people of a certain industry or a certain profession. Just look up Meetup. I think it's meetup.com or something like that. And you will be able to find, if it does exist in your country, you'll be able to find a range of meetup groups. I know for sure that they exist here in Australia and are quite big. Facebook groups can be really useful. So Facebook is not just for socializing and planning parties. Facebook can also be for, especially if you're an expat moving to another country and you're looking for some career guidance, Facebook groups can be really helpful. Family and friends connections. So even if they're not in your immediate family or no one in your family could give you a job or help you, it's talk of, that there used to be 8 degrees of separation in the world. So basically only 8 connections between each person in the world, and with the world shrinking and communication growing, that's become smaller and smaller. So chances are that in your family and friends circle you actually have people who could really help you find out more, especially if you know more about what industry you want to go into or what type of role. And I'm not talking about people giving you a job. I'm talking about someone who's saying, hey, do you know anyone who works in marketing, specifically digital marketing? I think it would be something I'd be interested in, but I'd really like to talk to someone who does that. Could you connect me with someone so I could get a little bit of help and guidance? So you're not asking for a job, you're asking for, some brainstorming and things like that. Past employers can be really good. I have great connections at many, many places where I used to work in the past. So just because you've left doesn't mean that you can never talk to them again or never leverage those connections again. All it means is that, I'm sure that even if you worked in a marketing department and you want to move into finance, I'm sure there was a finance department at your old work. Who at that department did you get along with the most, and could you reach out to them? And also people you studied with back at uni. It's actually quite fun sometimes to reconnect with people on Facebook or LinkedIn from your study days and see what they're doing now. And they might have ended up doing something or working in an area or for a type of company that you would actually like to work for. So it can be really fun. Some caveats though on networking is do your research, show interest, and ask meaningful and insightful questions about them. So come from the angle of how can you help them? So that triggers the law of reciprocity. So the law of reciprocity is very, very powerful in networking. And it means if I give you something, or if I help connect you with a person, you are likely to want to do the same for me. It's just a human nature. So what are some people, for example, if you know someone who works in recruitment, could you help recommend people to get in touch with them? You know, could you ask them if they're looking for a particular candidate? Even if you're not interested in the role, maybe someone in your network will be. And when you've helped them, they'll want to help you. So give first, and the law of reciprocity will kick in. Another really helpful thing is similar to what I did before with that little statement about digital marketing, is have a short statement ready of what specific type of opportunity or connection you're looking for. Even if the job isn't clear, even if you're only now starting to brainstorm and go, I would love to do something creative, I would love to do something artistic, maybe that's your entire statement. Maybe it's something like, hey, you're at the barbecue or the family dinner or at the pub with your mates or whatever, and you start talking to this person you don't normally talk to about this sort of stuff, and you say, well, look, I'm kind of getting fed up with my job. I'm feeling like I've got a really creative streak inside of me that I'd really like to elaborate on more. Do you know someone who's gone from kind of corporate to a more creative job? Because I'd love to just kind of connect with some like-minded people and hear about what they did. And then whoever you're talking to might go, oh, look, I don't, but my girlfriend's best friend did that last year. Why don't I connect you to? So start getting really, really creative, because sometimes the nearest opportunity that can help you is actually someone who's in your circles already. And I will say a lot of the past job roles that I've had have been exactly that. I've started to talk to someone in my networks. I've said, hey, I'm looking for a new opportunity. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to learn more about this particular area. And someone will go, oh, I know someone who works with an organization that you'd love, and then connected me with them. Okay. So some final learnings. We're almost there. We're going to do question and answer time in just a moment. So make sure you get your questions ready. So the final things I would like you to take away from today is be specific about what you're looking for in the short and the long term. Remember that whole great and okay list. Because if you are specific about that, people will be able to help you. If you are not specific about what you're looking for, who you want to connect with, it's really hard for people to help out. And believe it or not, people are actually usually wanting to help each other out. Think outside the box. So are there more ways to connect with the career that you want? Is there a membership organization you could join? Are there, online courses you can do? Are there, books that you can read, especially now over the holidays? Usually you've got more time on your hands than you usually have. So what can you do with that time? I'm not saying I want you to sit and work and focus on 2018 the whole time, but imagine if you took a day or half a day or something like that and really dedicated that to set yourself up for next year. I bet you would have very, very different opportunities coming your way. What topics, industries, or professions would you like to learn more about? Even if you don't know for sure that marketing or sales or finance or coaching or health and fitness or whatever might take your fancy is for you, what industry could you find out a bit more about? Just Googling articles, reading news, finding out more. If you look up something like health and fitness on the job search engine in the country you're currently in Australia, seek.com.au would be a good place to start. So if you look up, health coach or a health instructor or personal trainer, like what comes up, so research is a really broad term, but just kind of set yourself some little tasks and check them off your list, which will make you feel like you're moving forward. And my final question, which no one likes to hear, is what are you going to do now? So we've spent almost an hour together. I love to talk. I do apologize, but I've shared some of my best tips with you, and a lot of these tips are in the program I deliver. Obviously, I deliver them in much more detail when I meet people one-on-one. But ask yourself, what are you going to do now? You could park this, whether you're listening to this live or the recording, you could park this and just deal with it later and say, oh, that thing from Emmy was great, but I'll look at it in January when I'm in a better headspace. I would love for you to at least set a time and a date when you're going to sit down and have a think about some of the things we talked about today. And that concludes all the magic that I wanted to give you guys tonight. I have an email coming your way in the next 24 hours, which will have a handout with some of the exercises so you can actually start working your way through the 5 steps we covered. I'll send you some links to a couple of free strength profiling tests that you can do online should you want to. I'll also send you some clues, especially around the values exercise we talked about at the start. And while you're thinking about any questions you might have, I have a very simple next step for you. All you got to do right now, other than potentially let all this information land, is to read the follow-up email I'm going to send you in the next 24 hours. And if you do want to have a free 30-minute chat about the program that we run at The Bridge Coaching, or how it works when you do these things one-on-one with me, or anything else, please do get in touch via hello@thebridgecoaching.com.au. Actually, I'm going to leave that there just whilst, if there's anyone's got any questions. I did get a question while you might be typing. I did get a question via email from a person who couldn't make it on the call today, but kindly sent through this question. And she had some frustrations around the concept of the whole, what we covered early on in the call, which is the why. And she said, look, I don't really know my why. I find it really hard to connect with my values. I feel really, really stuck and really unhappy right now. And I don't have the emotional bandwidth to start on this whole self-exploring journey and turn myself inside out. And I totally understand where she's coming from with this question, because it's an important one to ask from time to time. So what I would say, if that is you, and thank you to the person who asked this question, who will remain anonymous, I really appreciate this question coming up. So the one thing to do is start with one of the 5 areas we talked about today. If you don't feel like doing the values exercise, you don't have to. I know as a matter of fact, it will help you, but if you're not ready for that right now, then don't. If doing the list of the jobs and companies you definitely don't want to work for, you might want to work for, they'd be kind of okay, or something really great. If that's a lot better for you, then start there. So what I'm going to send you is a handout with a bit of a smorgasbord with a couple of different exercises. So start with 1. That's all you got to do at this stage. Start with 1. It's not about turning yourself inside out. Sometimes it's just about going from a job that's really, really borderline harmful for you to doing something that you enjoy more. But there's no one universal answer, but I can assure you that if you do spend a bit of time over the holidays, or whenever you're listening to this recording, if you do spend a little bit of time, even just half a day on the weekend or something like that, you will find that you'll be miles ahead of people who haven't even thought about this. And that brings us to exactly 9 o'clock in Melbourne. I think it's stopped raining outside. It must be a sign. I want to thank you all for being on the call. Thank you to everyone who sent through their questions beforehand. Thank you to anyone who's listening on this recording afterwards. I would like to, with Christmas just around the corner here in December 2017, I would like to wish you a beautiful and safe holiday season wherever you choose to spend it and whoever you are with. If you ever have any questions about our webinars or products, or curious about what I'm working on next, I've got a couple of cool things coming out early next year, especially in the career space. So do keep an eye out for that. But for now, I'm going to say goodnight to you and wish you happy and safe holidays. And we look forward to see you soon at one of our webinars or one of our other things.